Dan to come online? Nothing. Oh, okay. All right. Welcome, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. Is there any conflicts of interest for any items on the agenda? I don't see any. None noted. Adoption of the minutes of LaSalle Police Board Committee and public meetings held October 2nd, 2020 be adopted as presented. Moved by Dan, seconded by Crystal. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. First report, LaSalle Police Service 2021 budget proposal. Okay, we talked about that last meeting. Dan's there. Crystal, any questions, comments, discussion? Chief, do you want to add anything before we go on?
No, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Marty, I see he's there. Board's pleasure. Mr. Allen, Mr. Comsa, or Mrs. Malash? Crystal.
Through you to our chief, after reviewing the budget, and I know we discussed last time the hiring, the reserving a spot for December, reserving a spot possibly in May. But since then, I think looking at numbers of our own budget with the town and police, I'm concerned with our current COVID situation of any extra spending. Not that it's not needed, because your report was thorough and well explained why we should hire officers. My concern is the timing may not be perfect for it right now. And with the fact that we are looking at hiring a new chief in the beginning of the year, I think it would be maybe in the best interests of our board and maybe the police service in general to wait until that new police chief is on, for them to understand what's going on in the department, and then to have a situation where they can recommend possibly hiring the next budget session. I'm not sure what the other board members feel about that, but I really considered maybe possibly doing a May hire, but I'm just thinking we should maybe leave it to the new chief to have that discussion with us. And also, like we said, with COVID and the numbers that are out there right now, I think I'm really concerned with our budget going forward as a municipality as a whole.
So Mark, it's Marty.
Yes.
It's a very difficult decision for me to make, and because I know that there's a need when the head of an organization comes and says that they need extra people. I have to believe them. Through last year, I'm not sure what the hell happened, but the timing on this is probably not the best with regards to the budget of the municipality, the uncertainty of the money there, the COVID, a new chief coming in. So, Crystal, I have to trust what the councillors and Mark say, and I will support I will support that theory or that position.
Okay. It is a tough time, and at where we stand, we are discussing budgets, and the last 2 years were 0% increases, and this year it will not be that. We are affected by COVID. We have extra expenses and less revenue, and we will be proceeding with a budget that will be in the up category. We don't know where. They're working on it, and I contribute trying to get it as low as possible, but they're saying there are just things that we cannot avoid. And there's a phase 2 of intake we're trying to get, but we don't even know if we qualify for some of that money. sadly. And seems to be the record with the town of LaSalle. When we try to apply for grants, we don't receive them. So on that note, Crystal, is that a motion to defer, or I guess not approve the budget with the 3 hires? And I think that number, if I'm mistaken, Chief, you can correct me. I was told by our finance department, the 3 positions in your budget proposal was $248,000. Is that correct?
That sounds accurate.
Okay, so I don't have a calculator with me, but there's a recommendation here that the 2020 total budget be 328. So somebody with a calculator at 8.328 will be 248,000 off of that. So Crystal, are you making a motion that we approve the budget as presented minus the 248 for the 3 hires? Okay, that's moved by Crystal Malash, seconded by Mr. Allen. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, couldn't see your hand up, Marty. Thank you. All right, that passes. Item 2, the Fall Labor Seminar and Sponsorship Request. The board secretary regarding 2020, the Fall Labor Conference for sponsorships be received.
Move receipt.
Moved by Mr. Allen, seconded by Deputy Mayor Malash. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. We're going in the D category, information items to be received, LaSalle Police Service mask policy. Moved by, did you want to add anything, Chief? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Crystal.
Thank you. I just actually wanted to thank Chief for providing this. We discussed it at one of our last, well, 2 meetings ago, I think it was. And I know it's not an easy time for anyone, but I appreciate the very detailed report on our mask policy because it doesn't look like things are changing anytime soon. So thank you.
That's a good policy, Chief. Thank you. Okay, we need a mover and a seconder. Mr. Allen and Mrs. Malash, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. Ontario Sex Offender Registry Site Assessment. The police was 100% compliant, with which exceeds the provincial compliance of 95%. Good to hear, Chief. Any comments? None? Okay.
Just job well done. Fantastic.
I'll take that as a move, Mr. Comsa,
Yes.
and seconded by Mr. Allen. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. LaSalle Police Service AODA website compliance. Did you want to add something, Chief? There we go. So presently, it's not compliant at the moment.
That's correct.
Okay. So steps are underway, as I see here, to take care of that. And it's roughly $20,000 budget.
No, it'd be item number 3. There's 3
Oh,
options.
okay. Yes, yes. Sorry. Didn't turn the page. Okay.
Yeah.
So will that come at no charge to us, Chief?
It might be a few dollars, but that's pretty much the result of the team collaborating with those with the St. Clair team,
Good.
IT team.
Glad we have access to them. Motion to receive. Crystal Malash and Marty Comsa, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. It's the MSG, OA, PSB, and AMO correspondence summary number 5 of all the correspondence received. Motion by Crystal Malash and seconded by Mr. Allen. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. Crime Stoppers Coordinator and Statistical Reports for September 2020. Nothing unusual in that report, Chief?
Our calls for service are up 50%.
For Crime Stoppers? Oh, you went to number 6. You jumped one ahead. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
jump on ahead there.
Motion to receive the Crime Stopper statistics. Any questions? Mr.
Move it.
Allen? And
I'll move it.
Mr. Comsa, all in favor? That carries. Thank you. There we go. Now we're on LaSalle Police Service statistics for August and September 2020.
So
Go ahead, Chief.
I have a question. I have a question for
Oh,
the chief.
sorry, Marty. Sorry, I thought it was the chief.
Sorry. So Chief, do you have any, in general, other than the total Highway Traffic Act cautions, okay? What's the general, the general, why is it up so much?
Can you hear me, Mr. Colomsa?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can hear me. Okay. I'm sorry, your question is why are the calls for service up so much?
Well, I take total occurrences investigated, is that 1206 up from, sorry, it's 1870 versus 1206, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so other than the specifically the traffic cautions, just in general, what is it?
Well, this document reflects charges, enforcement actions, first of all. So not every call for service that we attend involves an enforcement action, but it's still an occurrence that officers have attended. It takes up our time, and we have to track and account for that. So it could be anything from a neighbor dispute to an assault that was unfounded, but yet still requires an investigation. So what you're seeing, the charges here are listed, and of course those are up considerably, but it's our occurrences investigated when we're being called to respond to the public's request for assistance. So, and again, that could be anything from an inquiry to something that requires more of an investigation.
So Kevin, I think this is a really, when I saw this, I was quite shocked, to be honest with you. And so I'm just wondering if there's any way that in future reports we could get any kind of a trend that's happening, because if you go 50% from one year to another, obviously the charges do not relate up to the occurrences, right? So I think we need more information. So Chief and Deputy Chief, if you could maybe give us a little bit more reports or maybe more information at further meetings. And I don't know how the heck you do that, but I'm really interested in, what the trends are, if that's okay.
I mean, I think I indicated in the October meeting that since last year, we've noticed an increase in calls for service. And we certainly have no control over that. And again, we have to respond that every time someone calls or comes to the lobby or wants to speak to an officer, that's an event that we have to track. And again, we have more requests for directed patrols. We have more requests. We have more neighbor disputes. It's just our population is increasing. So with that is going to come more calls for service. So I'm not sure how you want me to sort of report on that, Mr. Colomsa.
And I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer either, Kevin. I guess I'm just looking for. See, the chief at the last couple of meetings, indicated that the population is growing. There's more occurrences, and I would just like more information somehow on that so that I can justify some actions that I think we have to take in the future. You understand, you understand what but I don't have an answer. I don't know your operations, but I certainly think that, look, if your occurrences are growing, the board has to know how and why and what's going on. And just by this report, I can't, if somebody asked me the question, I'd say, I'm not sure why, right? So I don't know, I don't have the answer of what I'd like to know. I just would like you guys to come up with something that you think we should know so that we can act accordingly in the future with, for example, budget requests.
Maybe if go ahead, Mr. Allen.
But Deputy, could some of that be related to the COVID activity where no charges, but more inquiries and other kinds of activities that wouldn't lead to a charge being laid?
Well, you'll notice that the COVID stuff is down at the bottom of this document. And as the chief has pointed out in the past, our COVID related calls for service may be 5 a week.
Oh.
5, I would say no more than 10, but I think that's high.
Okay.
Because people are now, sort of used to how things are supposed to be. They're wearing masks. They're not crowding the supermarkets, things like that. So I would certainly not say that our increasing occurrences investigated is related to COVID.
Okay.
As I indicated at the last meeting, our calls for service for mental health are increasing. We've had 20 fentanyl overdoses this year. So those are all just trends that are going to continue. And if you look across the province, that's not changing. Everybody is experiencing those. And as I also indicated, we have not changed the way we report our stats. I was shown this when I took over my role here as deputy chief, and I simply carried on from Deputy Chief Scanlon and carried on from Deputy Chief Bantetti. So again, we can't control when we're called. We just have to respond, and it's the numbers don't lie. I mean, they're there, and you can go month over month, year over year, and we're seeing the increase. There's a number of factors that are probably responsible for that. As I said, population. We're being asked, people are calling the police more often. It could be part of the reason. The relationship we built, they're comfortable calling us when they want an issue resolved. I think I'm preaching to the choir when I say to the deputy mayor and the mayor, they're getting calls all the time about speeding vehicles, and they pass those on to us. So those are things we have to respond to. And that's why, when we do that, we have to track it. And it's also one of the reasons why we're one of the safest communities for our traffic enforcement, our fatal accidents. Our traffic enforcement is also increased year over year. So
Maybe I can make a suggestion here to the deputy chief. Looking at the next reports, which are more detailed in your, I'll call it the D calls, D002s, and I notice in there's whatever call you want to pick. Mental Health Act, there was 4 in August. There was 5 in September. And I just picked on that one because you mentioned Mental Health Act, Deputy Chief. But maybe it would help, to Marty's question, if we compare these statistics in 2020 compared to 2019. And as Mr. Allen stated, is this COVID related? I know you stated there's COVID related statistics on the bottom of the page on the simplified version of the calls, but I take it a step further. That is it COVID related in that people, for example, you said neighbor disputes, because they're on edge, they're at home. is that causing, because of the COVID, for them to be in dispute or speeding? Because I see a lot of things that aren't, do I want to use the word normal activity this year? Even in my job, my other job, I find totally difference in behavior, which is not normal. So I attribute that to the COVID experience where people are doing things differently and they're short-tempered and they're more aggressive. So it kind of correlates to the increased calls of whatever these are. I call it the Ds. So if it's a possible suggestion, if the next reports we get and you give us these D calls, can you compare them to the prior year? And then we can see, oh, wow, last year we had no mental health calls for September, and this month we have 5. And so on. And then we can look at, like you do for the prior pages with the charges and the occurrences investigated. I don't know if you can do that with your computer system. Okay.
Example, in September, or sorry, August, there were 14 COVID-related calls for service. In September, there were 18.
But that's directly related to COVID. I'm assuming to mask wearing or something else. What I was suggesting is the calls for service increase of, let's say, 50%. Is that related to COVID emotions, people's attitude? And that's why the neighbor disputes are more this year than last year, because everybody was working, they're happy to go into work. Some people might be under pressure financially, mentally. You can't code that. You just call it a neighbor's dispute. So I'm just suggesting, I'm not asking for any evaluations. I'm just wondering if in those D calls, you could compare it to the prior year. That's all.
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. So on LaSalle Police Service statistics for August and September. Moved by Deputy Mayor Malash, second by Mr. Allen. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. LaSalle Police Service financial statements for August 2020.
So move.
Moved by Mr. Combs, says seconded by Mrs. Malash. All in favor? That carries. Thank you. LaSalle Police Services Board financial statements and general ledger for August and September of 2020.
Move it.
Moved by Mr. Allen, seconded by Mrs. Malash. All in favor? That carries. Any questions or statements by board members? Seeing none, next meeting, November 16th at 4:30 for in camera and 5 p.m. for public. Thank you, everyone. Meeting adjourned.